Today we're looking at part 2 of 2-part series. Last week we talked about spiritual denial. This week we're looking at spiritual affirmation, what it is and how to use it. And these are two ideas that you'll find in the very earliest unity literature, denial and affirmation. It's a process we go through. It's actually what prayer is about. It's two sides of prayer, releasing and affirming. And last week we talked about the importance of letting go, of releasing, and particularly of any appearance that is going on in our life that we're not too sure about. But it's more about pulling your energy out of the picture that you're holding or the picture you see. And by that I mean, you know how it is when you are worried about something. You're holding a vision, you're holding a picture in your mind, and you're also investing emotion into that, and that becomes our experience. It becomes the experience we're having now. Because you can be in this room, for example, and the thing you're concerned about could have happened a long way away. Could be dealing with something that's not in this room. But it's in this room because it's in our head, our heart. It's in our consciousness. And we're having an experience with it. And if it's something we're calling negative and we're reacting to it, we're giving it our attention and our power. And so spiritual denial is the process of acknowledging that that's going on and making a new decision to say no to that, to the use we're making of our attention and our power. And we don't really want to say that we're powerless over the situation. What we're powerless over is the event or the thing that's actually going on. But what we are concerned about is the experience we're having on an internal level. And we are never powerless to deal with that. Only because we forget that we can, or we forget how, that we don't remember right away to exercise that ability to withhold our energy from that appearance. And sometimes it seems contradictory. It seems like it's irresponsible to not give it our attention, our power. But that's where the affirmation side comes in. And that's why you can't really have one without the other. It's a practice of, it's two sides of the same coin. We don't just deny. We don't just seek to release an appearance. We want something beyond that. And so we affirm, and we affirm what is true at the deepest level. And that takes some thought, actually just some reflection, I should say, of what we mean by that and what we want to have happen. What we want to do, what we're focused on, is changing the level of experience we're having internally. That's what the spiritual thing is about. When Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you, he was specifically pointing out it's not something outside that comes. It's a change within us. So we have access to a higher dimension within ourselves. And that higher dimension, we find it beyond thought and feeling. And that is the normal thought and feeling, the normal assessment that we have of a situation. And if we are holding a negative vision and pouring negative energy into that, when Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you, he's saying it's past that, it's beyond. See, that particular picture is within you as well. But it's at a different level. The kingdom of heaven he's speaking about, the kingdom of God, is a higher reality. And we want to know that we have access to this higher reality. And we may not have a deeply illumined experience, a deeply illumined knowledge of this, but we don't have to bring it about in our awareness. The kingdom of God, or whatever you want to call it, the spiritual dimension, is always here. There's always a high level of experience that we have access to, but we have to make the choice to do it. And so often we don't. So spiritual affirmation is a way to do that. Denial and affirmation. Spiritual denial is the deliberate act of pulling our attention and power out of negative reactions to life's events. Spiritual affirmation is the assertion, through visualization, word, and feeling, of a greater good unfolding. Again, Jesus said that when you, all we need to say is yes or no to any proposition. And he doesn't mean this literally. This is a mental attitude, because if he meant it literally, the gospel according to Jesus would simply be yes or no. That's the thing we apply to everything. He said a lot more than yes or no. So he's not saying that in a literal way, but he's talking about denial and affirmation. That's the key that we have. We're saying yes to something that may not be so good, and no to something that maybe is. Because if we're worried about something, we're saying yes to that thing, to that scenario that we have going on in our mind. We're saying, yes, I will give you my attention and power. We're using affirmation. We all know how to do it, but it's in a negative way. So that's the whole trick to this spiritual thing, is being aware. We say yes and no all the time. It's the good fish and the bad fish. We're going to keep a certain fish, we're going to throw away a certain fish. And we have to decide which one we're keeping right now and which one we're throwing away. It's just being mindful, being aware of what it is and how we're using our mind at a given time, any given moment. Denial clears the way, while affirmation sets in motion the creative energy that generates desirable ideas and favorable conditions. We can think of these two actions as the activity of love, which dissolves that which is not for our highest good, which is denial, and draws to us that which is affirmation. So if you go out and build a building and you bring in a bulldozer, you clear away the space, you define the space where you're going to put that building. So there's a part that looks like it's a tearing down or a tearing up of the space you want to use to lay your foundation, but that's exactly what it's for, to lay a foundation. And so the bulldozer in this sense is a good example, a good illustration of denial. We are denying that landscape to remain the same, to remain as it's always been. We're going to alter it. We're going to let go of how it was. And the landscape we're talking about, of course, is our state of mind. Something pops up, we have a reaction to it, that's our landscape. And it's either positive or negative. And if it's negative, we want to get the bulldozer and fire it up and start clearing things out so we can bring in the building, so we can build something new. When Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free," he was stating a vital principle. The truth we come to know is that the soul is already free. To know the truth is to know yourself at the deepest level. So that's the goal. When Jesus spoke of truth, Pilate said, "What is truth?" And Pilate, being the politician, would have had a very different concept of truth than a spiritual teacher, a mystic, would have. But when Jesus said the truth would set you free, he was saying there's something that you have access to, you'll know it, and when you do know it, you become free. And what is that something? The truth is we are already one with the infinite. We're already one with the absolute. We're already one with God. When we fall into a state of fear and worry, we're falling away from the awareness of who and what we are at the deepest level. And we do this all the time, so much, in fact, that it seems like the most natural reaction. It's what everybody does. But we don't want to respond like everybody if we are serious about our spiritual education. We want to take what we know is true or what we are learning, and we want to put it to the test. Do we have the power to be in a situation that seems greater than we are, where it doesn't seem that we have the resources to deal with it? Can we be in that kind of a situation and actually be free? Experience a level of freedom unlike anything we've ever known? Theoretically, we can say, yes, that is possible because I am an expression of God, and God has nothing to fear. But in a practical sense, we don't necessarily think that. We have that in theory, but how do we bring it into practice? And the very best way is to start with a problem. You've got something going on in your life right now, think of that. The thing that feels like it's kind of under your skin, the thing that kind of bothers you, that has your attention, and maybe not always forefront, but is kind of back there grinding away and manifesting through your body as stress, and just a sense that you don't know what the future holds, and it's all uncertain. And you don't know exactly how to deal with this particular situation. Maybe it's a relationship. Something's popped up with somebody and you don't know quite what to do about it. I had a very meaningful experience over at hospice this week with a woman. I sat with her for about 45 minutes. It's dying. And she was actually pretty terrified by the prospect of that, didn't want to let go, was afraid of leaving her family and all of that. There's not a lot a person like myself can say to a person like that, but she's in a situation, it's like the ultimate thing. How would I deal with that same situation? How would you deal with it? We probably all think about it. We all probably think we know how we would deal with it. I think ultimately she will get to a point where she will know it's okay, that she will know that there is a greater good that is on the other side of this experience. I talked a little bit about the near-death experience with her, but she wasn't ready to hear any of that. It was a negative thing. We don't want to talk about that. And to me, it's not a negative thing. It's a very positive thing, a very inspirational thing, but I could tell immediately that that was not the right subject, the right way to talk about it, so I didn't. So we acknowledge that we're in a place that we don't know how to handle. And I would say a person in her position, that would be kind of like one of the ultimate things. You know, we're standing at this horizon that we don't remember ever having gone through. And it's in a kind of a selfish way, it's a very inspirational experience for me to have as a minister, to sit with somebody who's there, to hear them talk and to get feedback on what they're going through and what they're trying to avoid. She didn't want to be there in that situation. But I have been with others in that exact same place, that same building, that had had experiences that show them there's something more. Many people have dreams, very vivid dreams, or they call them dreams, but they all say they're unlike any dream they've ever had, but they're actually visions of the experience they're about to enter. And when they have that vision, it's like all fear goes away. There's not an ounce of fear. It's like excitement. And it's a pretty amazing thing to see. But I have sat with several people that were afraid to confront that experience. And the reaction is very different, but it's not too unlike what we all go through in this life. The experiences we have here, if we are seeing a negative situation as something that's we don't understand, it's beyond our control, we'll be afraid of it. We tend to react in fear. But then we can reach a point where something in us rises and we know that we have a power within ourselves that's greater than this apparent obstacle or this barrier, this what looks like a cliff or something we don't understand. And we see that it's really not that way at all. That there's something that will carry us through. And that's why it's kind of good to remember this is not your first rodeo. This is not the first time you've been through something. Think of all the times you have, and most of us can't remember most of them. But we got through them. We've all had times we didn't know how to get through. We didn't know what we were going to do to take the next step. But see, the whole thing we're talking about here, denial and affirmation, this is a natural thing. Whether you think about it or not, it happens. You're denying something. In the case of the woman I was talking to this week, she was in denial of what was actually happening. And I completely understand that. Because any of us that confront something we don't understand in this life go into denial. That's usually what we do in a negative kind of way. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to handle this situation. I don't have the resources to deal with it. So we're denying the power that we have, but then we get to some point where we realize we do have the power. And the denial comes in the form of a knowing it's all going to be okay. And I have every reason to believe that this woman is going to touch that place eventually and be okay. And a lot of the fear there is, how will people get along without me? What will my family do? What will the people I love? How will they handle this? And that's totally understandable. It's compassion for others. And what I said to her is, they'll be okay. You know, we are okay when a loved one goes on. But that was not convincing to her either. So I didn't say too much more about that. But I know that's true because I've experienced it in my life. I know you have. That there's something that knows how to take over, how to move on, how to go forward in life after we're confronted with something we don't know how to deal with. So we have to understand that. We have to, any technique that we come up with, denial and affirmation is a technique. It's a technique designed to work in cooperation with a natural principle. That is, because the something in us is greater than that which is in the world, we will eventually come to the right perception. We'll come to ourselves. We're the prodigal son out in the far country. We'll come to ourselves. It's a natural thing. And what a technique like denial and affirmation is designed to do is remind us of how this works on a natural level. And maybe it'll save us some suffering. Maybe it'll save us some sleepless nights. That we look at the thing that we fear most and we say, I let you go. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know that there's something in me that will come forward, and I will know how. I'll know how to move through it. And whether we use a technique or not, we will come to that, and we will keep walking. We'll keep going forward. So it's important to remember that. You will know the truth. This is an affirmation. You'll know the truth. not let me teach you the truth. You'll come to know it for yourself, and this truth will make you free. So we come up to the point where we move just a little past self-doubt, self-fear, fear we don't have the resources to deal with the situation. And the next step, we're free. We step into freedom. So it's sort of a prophecy that he's saying, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. He's saying, this is how you work. This is the truth about you. You can be in total doubt this moment right now, but keep going. Because you will come to the point where you know the truth. You'll make that next step, and that next step is into freedom. So it's a very natural process, and that's what we always want to keep in mind. Techniques are important reminders for us. And everything we teach in this sense is a technique. Truth is a direct experience. It's an organic awareness. It's a coming to know the absolute within yourself, that Father within. Call it whatever you want. That's a natural thing. And we shake down all of our doubts and fears. We sift through all of that, and we come to ourselves. We come to that center of power. We know the truth, and that truth sets us free. So it's not like, let's get our books out and study until we know the truth and it sets us free. You can do that, and that's a very good thing, but a book only talks about technique. What we want is a living experience, and we all know what that means because we know the difference in trying to figure out getting the advice of the world and finally moving through that thing ourselves and finding our center of power. I've lost track of how many times I've been there and found that. Denial is the process of letting go of that which is not true of the soul. See, that's a very important statement. Denial is the process of letting go of that which is not true of the soul. We remember that when we affirm, we're not affirming anything that's not true of the soul. We're denying that which is not true of the soul. If you say, I'm afraid, I lack wisdom, I don't know how to handle this situation, that's not true of the soul. Your soul is actually sitting back saying, yes, you do. You've been through a billion things like this, and here you are. But it's that surface level of our consciousness. That's what needs the instruction. So denial is the process of letting go of that which is not true of the soul. Affirmation is stating and knowing that which is true. We experience greater freedom as the result of bringing the truth of our being to the forefront of our mind. This, in fact, is the essence of affirmative prayer. And it really is. What we're trying to achieve in prayer is not necessarily the changing of the situation we're praying about. It's a reconnecting with that center of power that we are, with the fullness of the soul. And it's important to keep that in mind, because when we're looking for a certain outcome in a situation, that may or may not occur. If it doesn't occur exactly like we think, does that diminish the soul? And the answer, of course, is no, it doesn't. That's why we say this or something better. Let's let the soul respond. Let's think of it on a soul level. Think of your day-to-day emotion and thinking mind as the surface of a lake. Sometimes it is calm and sometimes it is churning with waves. Think of your soul as the lake's calm depths, not subject to changes in weather. While the surface and the depths of the lake coexist, each represents a very different experience. The soul, like the lake's depths, is always free of turmoil. Denial is the deliberate act of taking our attention from the surface. Affirmation is our deliberate embrace of the peaceful depths of our soul. And again, this is a very natural occurrence, but it's helpful to be aware of the technique so we can put ourselves in line with it. I've told you many times the word prayer means to make an adjustment. We're adjusting our conscious mind to what is true at the spiritual level. And again, that's not always an easy thing to do, but whether we do it or not, we will come to it. Whether we consciously achieve that, like you go home and you're dealing with some issue, you can't seem to overcome it. You will. You will come to what you are eventually, and you will come to what you are as power. And you'll know how to step through this particular situation. So the surface of the lake, which is changing all the time, is unlike the inner depths, which are calm all the time. Scuba divers often go down in the ocean and they don't know there's a storm that's come in because it's a totally different world. They go up in boats being tossed around, and it can be a pretty frightening experience. But those two things coexist. Your life can be in turmoil right now at the surface, but there's a calm depth. And that's what we need to remember. What we do is we drop down into that the best we can. Denial is saying, I'm not going to stay at the surface. I'm going to let that go and drop down into that peaceful depth, into the deeper aspect of my soul. So we're taking our mind off the waves, and that's what we try to do, is we try to calm the storm. We try to calm those waves. If those waves would just calm down, I'll be happy. And they will, but they're not always calm. The ocean is never, no body of water is ever always the same. In that regard, even a glass of water has a surface and has depth. And it just, those two things exist together. But where's our attention? Is it at the surface? Is it at the depth? That's the question that we ask ourselves. Storms happen. Sometimes we see the clouds gather in the distance, while other times they catch us off guard. We've all heard of the calm before the storm. Let us seek to know this same calm during the storm. So I think that's an interesting idea. We all understand the calm before the storm. You see the clouds gathered in the distance. We notice this particularly in Missouri, well, here too. But storm clouds would gather, and sometimes they'd turn into tornadoes and just tremendous thunderstorms. We have those here as well. But often, if the wind would start blowing, and then it would just, everything would calm down, but the storm's still there, and you know it's just a matter of time. When Beth and I were sailing, you would get where you could read the water, that the wind would be blowing, then it would stop, but you could see it on the surface of the lake. The ripples would come. You could see there was a breeze above the surface causing ripples. They would look kind of black, from where you were on the boat. So you would know when that gust was going to hit the sailboat, and you'd be prepared for that. But it's so you see it coming, but the water beneath is always the same. We learn to ride the surface. And the way we learn to ride the surface is to ground ourselves in the depths. And that takes practice and awareness. But storms do happen, always. As long as we have this physical body on this plane, and we all do, there's going to be challenges that seem to be greater than we're able to handle. And none of them are. So that's what we want to remember. Jesus spoke of the threatening wind and waves. He said, "Peace, be still." 3 of the most powerful words in the Bible. The storm ceased. He did not allow inclement weather to rob him of his power. Instead, he spoke with absolute conviction from the depths of his soul. And that's a pretty interesting story when he and the disciples are all in the same boat, as we say. Jesus was asleep. They were being tossed about in terror during the storm. So the interpretation, which is very beautiful, is the Christ is asleep. The spiritual dimension is asleep. We're asleep to that. So the disciples shake him by the shoulder and say, "Wake up, aren't you? Worry right along with us. We're all going to die, so let's all worry about it." And he kind of chastised them about, "Oh, ye of little faith," or something like that. But he spoke to the storm. And so I like to think that the main storm that he spoke to was the one that was going on in their own minds and their thoughts and feelings. And I've been in a storm in a boat, and it's not fun. I know exactly what they were going through. And I wished I had a Jesus there with me sometimes, but we didn't. But I guess we did because we're here to talk about it. But it's that's what happens in life. You don't think you can handle the thing that comes up, that storm that comes up. But you awaken to Christ, shake his shoulder. That's the inner dimension, and bring that into play. And it says, "Peace, be still." And there is a stillness, because that's the nature of reality. The soul is always at peace. Through the practice of spiritual denial and affirmation, we too can let the calm peace of our soul rise to the surface of our mind and our life. And that's why we practice these principles. That's why we learn them. So we can go into our life, not to change the world, but to be in this world, but not of it. Learn to draw from that center of power that is never gone, never far from us, always with us. All right? Spiritual denial and spiritual affirmation. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.